Hi, I'm Scarlett at Gini Studio. In this video series, we're going to talk about all the crimes and legal issues in classic princess movies, starting with Snow White. The original Snow White was written by the Grimm brothers back in 1812, a time when young women were the properties of their fathers, and upon marriage became the property of her husband. A woman was not a person in any legal sense, but a piece of property. By the time Disney released Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs in 1937, women had gained the right to vote, were allowed to hold title to land in their own names, and had the right to have their own accounting. That is, women get to keep track of how much money she had, rather than having the money become her husband's the moment it was earned. But women still can't get financial credits by herself until 1974. If she wants to get a loan or a credit card, she would need to bring a man with her to the bank. Back to Snow White. Snow White was a legit princess. She's the king's daughter. The evil queen, who was obsessed with talking to her mirror, was Snow White's stepmother. Evil queen told the huntsman to bring her Snow White's heart in a box. She warned huntsman that there would be consequences if he doesn't do what he was told. The queen willfully premeditated with malice aforethought to kill Snow White. If Snow White indeed died in the hands of the huntsman, the queen would have committed first-degree murder. The huntsman, if he killed Snow White, he would have committed murder as well, but the difference is he wasn't doing it willfully. He could claim that he was under duress as a defense for committing the crime. In other words, he admits that he did commit the murder, but he should not be held accountable in court because he would not have killed the princess if the queen didn't threaten him of his own safety. Well, lucky for Snow White, huntsman changed his mind last minute. He held his dagger up but did not strike. No murder or attempted murder was committed. The huntsman put the pig's heart in the box and took that back to the queen. Let's say the queen rewarded him 50 gold and they go their separate ways. Huntsman misrepresented what was actually in the box, and the evil queen did not get what she bargained for, a heart for 50 gold. However, since murder is illegal, the deal between the queen and the huntsman was unenforceable. Evil queen could try to get her money back under the theory of unfair enrichment. That is, huntsman was richer by 50 golds, while the queen did not get what she wanted. But again, illegal is unenforceable. No court would help her get her money back. When you muddle in illegal dealings, the only remedy you could get would be through illegal channels. So the moral of the story is to just stay in the light, and you're protected by the law. Most of the time. Snow White fled to the woods and found the dwarf's house. She trespassed into the house, cleaned the place, washed the clothes, and slept on their beds. In America, if one of the dwarfs was at home and had a gun and thought Snow White was some dangerous monster, he could have shot Snow White to death before she even entered the house. Welcome to America, Snow White. In fact, it wasn't that much difference in fairy tale land. The seven dwarfs found out that some scary monster might have entered the house and was going to kill it before it woke up. The law says a person's house is his castle and he need not retreat. He can defend himself if he is in danger. That, however, doesn't mean you can kill any neighbor's toddler if he wanders into your house. The toddler will have to be an imminent threat to you, causing you to believe that you're in imminent danger of death or serious bodily harm to justify triggering self-defense. Snow White stayed with the seven dwarfs and became their domestic worker in exchange for shelter. As a minor under the age of 18, she is considered a legal infant and lacked the capacity to enter into a legally binding contract. Besides, child labor is illegal, unless it was a child working for a family business. It isn't clear how old Snow White was, but let's assume she's a teenager. Teenagers are allowed to work for limited hours depending on her age and if it was a school day. Let's say Snow White claimed asylum because she would be murdered if she returned to her home. She's then under the custody of the dwarfs as her legal guardians. Doing chores at home then is no longer illegal, much like the queen dressed Snow White in rags and had her clean and cook back at the castle. It is totally legal, so you might as well stop complaining about your chores. Now let's talk about the poison apple. Lacing an apple to make Snow White unconscious is a felony, much like date rape drugs. This time is actually not murder because the apple caused sleeping death, not death. It arguably also didn't cause great bodily injury because Snow White woke up unscathed. It did put her in a coma though. But what I really want to talk about is the kiss. When a girl is unconscious, you do not walk up to her and kiss her. That is sexual assault, Prince Charming. The problem here is the plot. The story made it okay for the prince to kiss an unconscious girl because it was the only antidote for the sleeping death. Not okay. What you can do though is CPR. You can perform CPR to an unconscious person. It yields the same result in this case. Snow White wakes up from a long sleep, saving her all the manual labor for cooking and cleaning for the dwarfs, and conveniently found by her true love when she wakes up. It is worth noting that the evil queen is the only one who died in the story, and her cause of death is arguably linked to the seven dwarfs. The queen might have trespassed to their house, but her retreating from it would negate any need for aggression by the seven dwarfs. They chased the ugly old lady to the edge of the cliff and cornered her, at which point they can't be sure if she actually was the queen or if she did actually kill Snow White. And the queen would not have died but for the angry mob of the seven dwarfs chasing her with pickaxes. The seven dwarfs might be held liable for causing the queen's death. If for any reason the huntsman cannot be located or the prince never found Snow White, the seven dwarfs risk going to prison. Remember, no one else knows the queen's plot to kill Snow White. Well, if you don't count the huntsman and the mirror, both are unknown to the seven dwarfs as potential witness to subpoena to help the case. On the surface, one may even argue that seven dwarfs kidnapped Snow White and killed the queen. One wrong step and things can get ugly really quickly. So there you have it, Snow White. Coming up next is Cinderella. Stay tuned.